Hello and welcome to Global News Today, bringing you in-depth discussion with leading experts every weekday here on Arabiya English. I'm Tom Burges Watson. Coming up on our program today, we'll have more on the situation in Venezuela, where Maduro's number 2 appears to have filled his shoes and appears to be cooperating with the Trump administration. We ask, how skillfully has she played her cards? Plus, as Israel's foreign minister visits Somaliland, we examine what he and his country are seeking to achieve in this breakaway region of Somalia. We'll also have the latest on the situation in Lebanon, where Israeli strikes on the south of the country continue. Hello and welcome to the program. We begin with continuing our coverage on Venezuela, and the opposition leader Maria Corina Machado has praised the capture of President Nicolas Maduro, calling it a major step for humanity. While speaking to Fox News hours after Maduro appeared in a New York court, Machado said she was grateful for the actions taken by the US President Donald Trump.
As soon as I learned that awarded the Nobel Peace Prize, I dedicated to President Trump because I believed at that point that he deserved it. I think he has proven to the world what he means. I mean, January 3rd will go down in history as the day justice defeated a tyranny. It's a milestone, and it's not only huge for the Venezuelan people and our future, I think it's a huge step for humanity, for freedom and human dignity.
Meanwhile, photos and videos posted by Venezuela's interior minister show armed police deployed across Caracas as he toured the capital on Monday night to oversee security. Well, let's get more now. We can speak to Peter Roff, who is a journalist and contributing editor at Newsweek, who joins us now from Washington, D.C. Peter, thank you very much indeed for joining us here on Arabiya English. So it looks like Delcy Rodriguez has filled Nicolas Maduro's shoes for now. Do you see the Trump administration working effectively with her?
I don't over the long term, because I think Rodriguez is the mini-me version of Maduro. To the extent she's been cooperative, I think it's been a matter of survival rather than a commitment to what's best for the Venezuelan people. And over time, I think there will be conflict between what President Trump thinks the future of Venezuela is and what acting President Rodriguez thinks. That will create a split that will ultimately see a shift in power towards Gonzalez and Machado, the leaders of the opposition.
Right, and we've heard from the Nobel Peace Prize winner you mentioned there, Maria Corina Machado. She says she's going to go home as quickly as possible, and she's really down on Rodriguez, calling her one of the main architects of torture, persecution, corruption, narco-trafficking. I mean, President Trump is in a situation where he has to take sides here. Is he going to be listening to Rodriguez, or is he going to listen to Machado? What do you think?
Well, I don't agree that he's in a position where he has to take sides. I think he believes that whoever wants to end up the ruling in authority in Venezuela has to take sides with him. And so in that sense, it's the choice of Rodriguez, it's the choice of Gonzalez. It's not Trump's choice. Trump is going to work with whoever wants to build a Venezuela that looks like the Venezuela Trump thinks should be. America first, his foreign policy regime, his foreign policy theory is very much unilateralist. It is America first in every sense. What's in the best interests of America, what America thinks ought to be done. Now, I don't necessarily agree with that, but that's what the president thinks. And so whichever political movement wants to work with Trump to make Venezuela or remake Venezuela, or to coin a phrase, make Venezuela great again, are the ones that Trump is going to end up working with.
Right, and we've heard from Rodrigo. She's talked about Maduro's, quote, kidnapping, and she's called for his return. Do you think she's saying that just to, obviously she's trying to play her cards as skillfully as she can. Is she perhaps saying that to avoid internal reprisals? Would that be your interpretation?
I think she's saying that to avoid falling out of a window or ending up in a car accident or a plane crash. Maduro kept power because he associated himself with people who did very unnice things. And Rodriguez has to pacify those people if she wants not just to stay in power, but stay alive. To the extent that she is mouthing the pro-Maduro line, again, I think it's a matter of her calculation that her personal survival depends on.
Right.
That's going to make it very difficult for her to work with President Trump.
Sure. And I mean, this isn't the United States running Venezuela, is it? That's not quite how people imagined things would turn out when we heard that press conference on Saturday from the president and the U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio. I mean, this is really remnants of the old regime, isn't it?
I think that's very much how people in the United States interpreted that press conference. That while we don't know what he thinks about how long it will go, that for the moment, the key decisions in Venezuela about Venezuela are being made in Washington by the United States, by Donald Trump, by Marco Rubio, by American policymakers. I think that's how the American people very much interpreted what he had to say Saturday morning.
So working with the remnants of Maduro's architecture, so to speak, and his number two taking the top spot. I mean, is that calculation based on the fact that full-on regime change would be too time-consuming, too risky?
I think it's based on the calculation that they're going to work with who's there, which is, I think, a mistake that the Bush administration made in Iraq. Paul Bremer, who oversaw the reconstruction of Iraq, behaved as though he were MacArthur in Japan, but forgot the key thing that MacArthur did, which was to leave the emperor in power, so that everything that he did would have the emperor's imprimatur and would be embraced by the Japanese people. The Bremer approach was to remove completely from power anyone who had been associated with Hussein's regime, which meant with Saddam's regime, which meant that there weren't people to keep the lights on or keep the oil flowing and the mail delivered or police the streets. Trump is not going to make that mistake. And so leaving Rodriguez in charge for the moment keeps the lights on, gets the mail delivered, keeps the hospitals open. If she refuses to cooperate with Trump's effort to make Venezuela great again, I suspect that she will be replaced, probably by the National Assembly.
And just tell us, Peter, how is all of this going down in the United States? I mean, there's been a couple of days to digest those pretty dramatic events of Saturday overnight into the early hours of the morning. Is there anger, or is there even anger within the ranks of the Republican Party that perhaps here we are with President Trump getting the United States involved in another foreign situation when, in fact, he suggested he wouldn't be doing that kind of thing? What's been the reaction?
Well, the most important reaction, I think, comes from the Venezuelan people who fled here during the years that Chavez and Maduro were in power, and they're dancing in the streets. They seem very happy, and I suspect that some of them are thinking about how to get home, to get back to their families and their businesses and the property that they had to abandon. The Democrats are almost reflexively opposed to what President Trump has done in Venezuela, as they are most reflexively opposed to anything Trump does in Venezuela. If it's raining and Trump takes an umbrella, they think that other people should walk around and get wet because Trump is using an umbrella, and that's obviously the wrong thing to do. There is some division in the Republican Party, but not on any level that matters. Out among the president's base, there are people who think that America first means isolationism. It means no U.S. military commitments at all, anywhere. And even though there are no boots on the ground, at least at the moment in Venezuela, they are opposed to that. But I think most of Trump's supporters are applauding his strong, decisive leadership to make real change in Venezuela because it is important to America's interests. I'll give the president credit. He has done a much better job of explaining what the America First case for engagement in Venezuela is than he has the America First case for Gaza, or the America First case for Ukraine, or the America First case for some of the other international conflicts that he says he's settled. I believe he claims the number is now 8.5. And he hasn't really talked about that much. He hasn't really explained why that's consistent with America First.
Sure. And just lastly, I mean, one of the other developments is, of course, the court case, which sort of got started yesterday in New York. Maduro appeared in court, pleaded not guilty. I'm just wondering, how do you see the whole legal process unfolding? And do you think there is going to be some concrete evidence, and maybe even some smoking gun evidence that implicates Maduro?
Well, I could make a joke and say he's going to get a fair trial before he's convicted. But I do think that if the criminal case against Maduro were not airtight, the United States would not have taken the extreme steps that they took to arrest him. And so I anticipate that he will have every opportunity to make a defense. I think that there may be points that he wins on, but ultimately, I think that the criminal case is probably airtight, and that he is like the former Panamanian dictator Manuel Noriega, that Maduro and his wife are looking forward to being long-term guests of the U.S. taxpayer at a federal correctional facility to be determined by the U.S. Bureau of Prisons.
Okay, we really appreciate you sharing your analysis with us. Peter Roth, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
Well, let's bring into the conversation Carla Sands, former US ambassador under President Trump, who served in Denmark. Thank you very much indeed for joining us once again, Ambassador. This is going to be a very quick discussion, but I mean, I just wanted to ask you first up, as those events unfolded in the early hours of Saturday morning in Venezuela, did you immediately turn your mind to other countries in the world that might perhaps be on notice? And I'm thinking in particular of Greenland.
You know, Tom, I didn't. I was so shocked at how amazing the U.S. military was to execute this and not lose a man. It was extraordinary. The precision, the organization, General Kane and Secretary Hegseth, just, I mean, I've never seen this kind of leadership, I think, in the U.S. in the last decades. And the fact that it was just an extraction, wasn't a war, and he was not a legitimate leader. Let's not forget that President Biden, he recognized the winner of the election in 2024, and he removed his immunity. So he was a criminal, a wanted criminal, with, at that time, a $50 million bounty on his head because he was a known narco terrorist. And he was wanted by the U.S. And so President Trump looks at this as a law enforcement action.
Okay, well, I mean, the wife of Stephen Miller seemed to join the dots very quickly by posting that message on Twitter with the U.S. flag pasted across Greenland's territory. And she said the word soon. Do you think that will happen soon?
Tom, I saw that. I couldn't believe my eyes. I'm sure the Prime Minister of Denmark was just like, you know, what am I going to do? It was a big surprise to see that. And, you know, she is right there in the room with Stephen, who is one of President Trump's trusted advisors. So, you know, I don't know what they are planning in the immediate future. I do know that President Trump has appointed Governor Landry as the special envoy for Greenland, and his purpose, his stated purpose, is to make Greenland part of the United States. So there hasn't even been a discussion with the Greenlanders what it would take to have them join in some kind of an association where they do have their wanted independence, but they're also secure and more prosperous, which they really want.
I mean, the Prime Minister of Denmark seems to be suggesting that seizing Greenland would spell the end of NATO. What do you make of that?
Well, I'm not sure what President Trump has in mind, but I haven't seen him seize countries. But I do know that he's a master negotiator and that he understands that people want prosperity. And the Greenlanders have been, I would say, candidly poorly served by Denmark. They're an afterthought. The Danes don't think about them. They haven't bothered to develop them. They can't afford to defend Greenland. And so they just get some welfare payments every year and sort of left up there in the high north where it's a little chilly. I think that there are probably better opportunities for the Greenlanders as offers are presented. And we certainly want to make sure that they are part of the West and not taken over by an adversary, which wouldn't be that hard under the leadership of Denmark.
So you're saying you don't think it's likely that force would be used to gain control of Greenland by the United States?
Well, I don't speak for President Trump, and he said he's not taking anything off the table. So I'm not going to say that, but I will just say that he is a great negotiator. And I think that it will get to a good place and a secure place at some point during his administration. And I feel bad for the Danes, but it's like when you own an asset you can't afford to own, so you don't maintain it, you don't secure it, and it deteriorates. Well, that's kind of what has happened in beautiful Greenland. And so there's probably more opportunity for the Greenlanders in the future. And we want to make sure they're part of the West. And they told me to my face, money has no color. We don't care where the investment comes from. And their leaders have publicly stated in the past few months, look, if the U.S. doesn't invest in our, infrastructure and in our mining, we're going to be looking to China.
Okay, well, Europe doesn't seem to like the look of this situation. 6 European nations have issued a statement. They said Greenland belongs to its people and only Denmark and Greenland can decide on what happens with regards to their future, or words to that effect. I mean, are we looking here at a growing split between the United States and Europe? And as an extension of that question, I mean, I can only imagine how delighted President Putin must be looking at all of this.
Well, first of all, I think that the strongly worded statements by the Europeans are not very important. They don't have any teeth at all in them. And I think Putin watched what happened in Venezuela. And I think that the move in Venezuela by President Trump is actually a tactical move regarding the Ukraine-Russia war. So this will hasten the end of the Ukraine-Russian war. I think every despot watched that action and the unbelievable capability of the American military and said, okay, we're on notice. Okay, what are we going to do if something like this happens? And I think it gave him pause, certainly. And the other countries that are being run by illegitimate leaders or bad actors. And we know who they are, right? The ones that are funding terrorism, the ones that are spreading evil around the world. And certainly Iran is one. I'm sure that the mullahs are looking at what happened. Their people are in the streets. They've been badly served. There's no money going into their infrastructure. Almost half the people have no fresh water because the mullahs have been draining the coffers to enrich themselves and to build up to fund terrorism, whether it's Hamas or Houthis, Hezbollah. They have terrorist training camps right in Venezuela. So bad things were happening in our hemisphere. President Trump is getting the entire bad actor world into a better place because of his actions, his strong command, and his clear speaking. He's telling them what he's going to do, and then he does it. So I think the end of the Russia-Ukraine war will be sooner because of what he did in Venezuela. I'm encouraged.
Okay, Ambassador Sands, it looks like 2026 is off to a very eventful start, and I hope the first of our conversations this year will not be the last. Thank you very much indeed. Really appreciate you taking the time to speak to us.
Thanks.
Now we turn our eye to the Middle East, and the Lebanese President Joseph Aoun has condemned Israel's latest strikes on his country, warning that they risk further escalation. Well, his comments came after Israel carried out strikes in southern and eastern Lebanon, saying that they were targeting Hezbollah and Hamas positions. Well, Israel has also questioned the Lebanese military's effectiveness and accused Hezbollah of rearming. Well, let's get more now. We can speak to Dr. Ahmad Saleme, who is a senior Middle East policy advisor and professor of political science and international affairs at the Lebanese American University. He joins us from Beirut. Dr. Saleme, let me just start by asking you about these what have become almost daily airstrikes on Lebanon by Israel. President Joseph Aoun has today been condemning Israel for these strikes on his country. But isn't there an argument that Israel is actually helping him to do the job that the Trump administration has asked him to do, namely disarming Hezbollah?
Absolutely. I mean, the Lebanese government has taken its own course in terms of disarming all non-state armed groups in the country. It has been taken the decision when the President Joseph Aoun announced this in his inauguration speech for president, and then government of Nawaf Salam decided also that no other armed groups are allowed beside the Lebanese army. So there has been a government consensus to disarm all groups and maintain Lebanese government as the sole monopoly of arms in its hands and its own security forces. So in that sense, the Lebanese government is taking its own way to disarm parties, Palestinians, and Hezbollah as well. At the same time, Israel is taking initiating military pressure against Hezbollah, bombarding all its military infrastructures, assassinating all its military leadership, and trying to the extent it can to undermine all supply lines coming to Hezbollah, particularly from Syria. Along that same pressure on Hezbollah to disarm, there is what is called the mechanism, which is a committee established after the agreement to end hostilities between Lebanon and Israel last year, and it meant to lead the efforts to make sure that Hezbollah is not being, militarizing itself again, nor it is maintaining its activity south of the Litani River or in other areas in the country. And this committee is made out of the United States, France, Israel, and the Lebanese government. And lately, the Lebanese government also included part of that mechanism committee, a political official is Simon Karam. So, and this committee is working on disarming Hezbollah. So there are many areas or many places where the disarmament of Hezbollah is coming from. And yet the party is reluctant to disarm. It feels that disarmament should be conditioned upon the withdrawal of Israel from the areas it has occupied, and for Israel to stop its activities, particularly in violations of the end of hostility agreement in 1701, where Israel continues to attack and assassinate its members. So it calls for Israel commitment to withdrawal and to end its hostility for the party to disarm. That's if it really accepted so. But till now, it's reluctant. It's putting pressure, increasing pressure on a government not to accept Israeli and American or the mechanism committee's conditions and to maintain its operations in the country.
Right. And of course, there's a timeline here as well, isn't there? And by the end of 2025, disarmament south of the Litani River was supposed to be completed. Then presumably the focus moves to north of the Litani River. I'm not quite sure. Maybe you can correct me there. But what happens if the United States runs out of patience with Lebanon and they don't think that enough is being done to meet the requested time frame?
I mean, of course, Israel, to begin with, is non-satisfied with the activities that the Lebanese army has been conducting south of the Litani River, where it claims to have completed its activities to disarm the party from that area by the end of last year. So starting 2026, the Lebanese army is supposed to start disarmament in the areas north of the Litani River and south of the Awali River, or, this is very close to the town of Saida. Pretty much the disarmament of Hezbollah in phase 2 should be done throughout all of the south of Lebanon, and then move on to phase 3 and 4 and so forth as a gradual attempts by the Lebanese government to disarm the party. Still, Israel is not satisfied. It considers what the army has done so far is short from disarming the parties, and therefore it continues to attack south and north of the Litani River. And, it is really difficult to verify what the Lebanese army has completed thus far, and whether these Israeli claims are legitimate and correct, because the mechanism is really made out of, it's dominated by the Americans and by the Israelis, and they have challenges verifying whether Hezbollah has been completely disarmed south of the Litani River and phase 1 has been achieved. So there is a continuous pressure, and helping Israel is the claims or the statements made by Hezbollah leadership by saying that they are not willing to disarm. So they're verifying what Israel is claiming, right, in a way. They're not being disarmed, and this is giving Israel additional justification to say, look, the party, Hezbollah, is saying that they're not willing to disarm, so how can we stop our military operation in the country? So this is the dilemma, and of course the Americans so far are not really trying to constrain Israel in any way. In fact, after Netanyahu's visit to Washington this year, he spent New Year in Washington.
Yeah, indeed. And you mentioned there the Hezbollah leadership, Naim Qassem, who says that by disarming Hezbollah, essentially he says that President Aoun is doing Israel's dirty work for them. But I wonder what the Lebanese people think. I mean, how popular is Hezbollah right now?
Of course, the popularity of Hezbollah has declined tremendously throughout Lebanon, given the fact that it has received a major military blow, and its engagement with the Israeli on the border for supporting Gaza has proven to be futile and very costly to the Lebanese economy, the Lebanese stability, and the entire population as a whole. So the popularity of Hezbollah is on a decline. Its former allies, like the Free Patriotic Movement on the Christian side, or many Sunni politicians who used to back Hezbollah, like Karami in the north, they're no longer making any supporting statements anymore, and they are backing off from supporting the party. The party now is under tremendous constraints. It has no longer the ability to finance itself the way it used to do before, when the Syrian government of Bashar al-Assad was present in Syria, and it has tremendous ability to supply itself via military or financial means, nor is it able any longer to really demonstrate its ability to confront Israel in any ways. In fact, they have lost more than 300 members, including their military leadership, in the past year without being able to retaliate. So their position is really weak. There are not, the support, the public support of the party is on a decline. Yet what remains of that support is primarily a Shia support of the sectarian support, because the Shia right now feel a bit threatened that not only there is an Israeli aggressions coming from the south and targeting their towns and villages, but there also a fear that if they got disarmed and Hezbollah no longer present and relevant to them, then there could be another overwhelming political and even military threat to them on Bekaa area adjacent to the Syrian borders, given that the current Sharia government and most of the opposition group that were able to topple Bashar al-Assad, they fought viciously against Hezbollah, and they considered that Hezbollah was responsible also to the preservation of the Assad regime in the past. So therefore, the Shia now in Lebanon fear retaliation coming from the Syrian borders, and therefore they have not yet given their confidence in the Lebanese army and security forces to protect them. They remain hesitant to give up their arms or to give up support to Hezbollah. They also look at Syrian Druze and they see what's happening in Suwaida and elsewhere where minorities are being attacked. So they play this kind of fear, Hezbollah from one side, and suggesting that once the Shia are disarmed, they can become extremely vulnerable by all different groups, as well as that of Israel. So the support to Hezbollah is maintained to some extent among the Shia for now, but it is definitely on a decline.
Okay.
It has proven to be not so effective in protecting them vis-a-vis Israel, and for being a reason why they have this animosity building up between them and the Sunnis and different parts of the Arab world.
Okay, and just lastly, Dr. Salemi, I mean, it's obviously, as you're saying there, it's been a very eventful 14, 15 months for Hezbollah and indeed by extension for Syria and Iran. Just briefly, the Iranian foreign minister is due to visit Beirut this weekend, I gather. I'm just wondering what sort of a welcome he'll get there and what you think he's aiming to achieve by visiting right now.
Our foreign minister was asked if he would go to Tehran to meet the foreign minister of Iran there, and he refused, and he called for the Iranians to meet with him in a neutral country. And by those statements, our foreign minister suggested that Iran is a hostile country, if you will, to Lebanon and to Lebanese interests by supporting non-state armed groups and by defying what the Lebanese government has requested, that Iran will deal with Lebanon from as a state to state rather than with a non-state armed group, or by dealing with Lebanon from a sectarian perspective. So the Lebanese as a whole do not welcome, if you will, this visit. They're not so geared up to receive an Iranian foreign minister where Iran already is being, by its own population, being resented, and there are much of protest there. So, and this visit may even fuel tensions between Lebanon and Israel from one side, and maybe undermine the efforts being made by the United States to bring about a settlement and peace agreement between Lebanon and Israel. So to a large extent, the Lebanese will not be so welcoming to that visit. Nonetheless, the Shia community in particular, who has felt the pressure of the latest military confrontation with Israel, with many towns have been destroyed, with many people being killed and injured, and in desperate need for financial support, they may find the Iranian visit a way to request more financial backing from Iran. But that's something that sounds to be not so assured any longer, given the fact that Iran is dealing with own problems and with own economic deteriorations and conditions. So it is, overall, I don't think the visit will be so much welcomed by the Lebanese as a whole, but definitely some sectors of the country will be looking for what Araji will be bringing in terms of financial support, if anything.
Okay.
Of course, I mean, if Araji, the foreign minister of Iran, will be coming to provide some sort of solutions, showing that Iran is willing to negotiate a settlement with Israel through Lebanon, that would be something Lebanon will be looking up for, because, you know, the Lebanese have been suffering for so long in their confrontation with Israel, and they need an end to this this non-ending dispute.
Okay, well, we're going to have to leave it there. We're out of time, but thank you very much indeed, Dr. Ahmed Salameh. Thank you very much indeed for your time, sir. Now, turning our attention to Africa, Israel's Foreign Minister Gideon Saar arrived in Somaliland today, aiming to deepen political and strategic ties. This after Israel became the first country to recognize the breakaway region. That's a move criticized by Somalia and several other countries, including the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. Well, let's get more on this. We can speak now to Abdinur Mohammed Ahmed, who is a former Deputy Chief of Staff to the President of Somalia. He joins us now from Mogadishu. Thank you very much for joining us on Al Arabiya English. Let me start by asking you this. The Israeli Foreign Minister Gideon Saar is today visiting Somaliland. Last month, Israel said it officially recognized Somaliland, making it the first country to do so. What do you think Israel is trying to achieve here?
Thank you, Tom, for inviting me to this program. Israel has multiple objectives to achieve for this move. Number one is the world has been talking about and discussing since 2023 about the massacre of the Palestinian people, where over 70,000 elderly women and children has been killed in Gaza. Hospitals has been bombarded. And there are an international court warrant arrested by Netanyahu and top leadership of the Israeli government. So Israel wanted to do this maneuver simply because to shift the narrative from, it is a massacre on the Palestinian people and try to create another front from the Horn of Africa, namely Somaliland.
Okay, so you're saying it's a sort of a distraction technique being used by Israel. Some people have been even more cynical than that and said that perhaps this issue of Somaliland is somehow linked to a future plan to displace the Palestinian people. What do you think of that argument?
I have seen Somali Defense Minister Ahmed Maalim Fiqi, who described Israel's attempt to recognize Somaliland as a gesture to displace Palestinians. And even the Somali President Hassan Sheikh Mohamud, who spoke several media outlets for the last couple of days, have mentioned a similar objective by the Israeli government. However, Israel has been violating the international law since its inception in 1948. And the latest, violations of international law has been it bombed, Doha, and it also attacked Iranian government. So recognition is something that has to do with something on international law, and Israel has been constantly violating and breaking the laws that has been set by continental and international bodies, including the United Nations and European Union. And that is why the Somali government has achieved, solidarity and consensus support from different nations.
Okay, and when you look at Somaliland on a map, it's at the foot of the Red Sea. Israel sits at the very top of the Red Sea. And it gives Israel the potential for building a base or having a military presence in the south of the Red Sea. But as well as being an advantage to Israel there's also a potential risk, isn't there, for Somaliland? Because the Houthis, for example, have said that were Israel to construct such a presence on Somaliland territory, they would consider that to be a legitimate target. So in effect, that would draw Somaliland into Israel's conflict. And that in turn would affect the security, wouldn't it, of Somaliland?
First of all, let me begin by reiterating that Somaliland has been a peaceful, region in Somalia. It has been a beacon of hope. It held, multiple presidential and parliamentary elections. And compared to other countries in the region, it was the most stable, place on the entire Horn of Africa region. Before December 2022, when war broke out in Las Anod, part of the northern region but now claims to be a federal member state recognized by the Somali government. And, having said that, Yemen has been in turmoil for the last decades, and so the southern part of the country was unstable. Daesh and Al-Shabaab were fighting for the last, nearly 2 decades. So Somaliland was a safe place, to invest in and to reside. However, these circumstances has created, Al-Shabaab have issued a warning to the Somaliland authorities that if you bring, Israeli government on Somali soil, or give them military bases, we will attack you. And the person who is saying that is one of the senior leaders of Al-Shabaab who hails from that region. Moreover, there is a Houthi who threaten Somaliland with their retaliatory actions if Israeli involvement takes place in the region. And we know Ethiopia is also in conflict in the Tigray region is recovering, but there are problems within Oromo and Amhara residents. So Sudan is also a case in point where Hamiti and Al-Burhan are fighting for the last 2 years. So basically Somaliland was a peaceful place, and we hope that this trajectory will continue in that region. However, this move will have regional implications. Saudi has intervened in Yemen, sovereignty and recognized that both Yemen and Somalia's territorial integrity, political independence will not be violated by any other state. So I think the implications will be there, but I hope that cooler heads must prevail and Somaliland must return to the negotiating table with Mogadishu, because if it wants a recognition, it is Mogadishu that decides that based on international law and other diplomatic norms.
Okay, I mean, just looking at the international reaction to that declaration by Israel that it recognizes Somaliland. I mean, a lot of countries have condemned this. We talked about Saudi Arabia in the introduction. There's also Turkey, Egypt, Yemen, Sudan, Nigeria, Libya, Iran, Iraq, Qatar. The list is long. Do you think any other countries will follow Israel's footsteps and go ahead with recognizing Somaliland?
First of all, many countries, including Djibouti, Eritrea, Uganda, Tanzania, and other regional powerhouses have already reaffirmed their commitment to Somalia's sovereignty and territorial integrity. We have also seen today there were an emergency meeting by the African Peace and Security Commission in which foreign ministers of the continent have discussed reaffirming Somalia's territorial integrity. And the chairperson of the African Union, Mohamed Ali Yusuf, has issued a a quick statement when the recognition of Israel was declared on the 26th of December. The Arab League has been, advocating for similar cause. We don't see currently any new countries that are joining Israeli initiative, and it shows that Israeli government is itself isolated. Many European countries are not allowing even Netanyahu to use the airspace because of his indictment with the International Criminal Court, and for his actions of killing innocent Palestinians. But I think regardless of what other countries move, Somaliland wants to negotiate with the federal government of Somalia for if it wants to have a similar independence and separation like South Sudan did when it renegotiated with Omar al-Bashir and the Sudanese government, and which finally a referendum has been taken and South Sudan become a full member of the United Nations. So Somaliland and Somalia need to return to the negotiating table because the people of the North are demanding, they have grievances previously committed by what they allegedly say that Mohammed Siad Barre, who has been ruling the country through military means between 1969 to 1991. But the whole country has collapsed, and Somaliland wants to use the international instrument if it wants to achieve a full independence from Somalia. I would like also to add few points that make this discussion more meaningful. Some of the northern regions believe the unity and the territorial integrity in Somalia, and the people of the Sool and Sanaag has been constantly rejecting Somaliland's claim of secession and full statehood from Somalia. So it will not only involve in the Somaliland, but also northeastern state, an emerging federal member state that has been established a few months ago, also should be put into consideration when we are discussing the northern regions or former British Somaliland getting independence from the rest of the Somalia.
Okay, and just to wrap up, your final thoughts just before we finish this conversation, and also your overall thoughts on the level of international support you see for Somalia on this issue.
The world has demonstrated, clear solidarity with Somalia, and for more than 3 decades, Somalia has been recovering from a devastating civil war, and the international community have heavily invested in Somalia's reconstruction and state-building projects. In terms of concrete support, the international community has helped Somalia rebuild its security forces. There is a massive infrastructure project in Somalia, primarily involved by the Qatari and Turkish governments. And there are also education support from multiple countries and partnerships. And so there has been a progress in that front. And also, Somalia has been working with its partners in enhancing a global economic exchange, trade, and diplomatic engagement. One of the countries that have deployed their foreign missions is the Turkish government that, relocated its embassy to Mogadishu in 2000 at the height of famine in 2011. So the current international response really reflects a broad consensus and solidarity with the Somali people and its government. And this has been reaffirmed by the Intergovernmental Authority on Development, known as IGAD, which is a regional Horn of Africa bloc, as well as the African Union, European Union, and more individual countries also reaffirm Somalia's, commitment reaffirming their territorial integrity. Arab League was also.
Okay.
And this month, Somalia is chairing the National, United Nations Security Council, which is the whole month of January. So even the council have a debate on the issue, and all the countries have rejected, except the United States, which remain
Okay.
An ambiguity in its response on this cause. But, big powers, we are also expecting the foreign minister of China to come here. France, China, and Russia has been with the Somali side. So the current, support from the international community is so massive. And Somalia expects, many more support from individual countries.
Okay, well, thank you very much indeed for that. Abdinur Mohammed Ahmed, former Deputy Chief of Staff to the President of Somalia. Thank you very much for your time, sir.
Pleasure to be you.
Well, that is all we have time for on Global News today. Thank you very much indeed for watching. Be sure to join us again tomorrow for more exclusive interviews. Until then, goodbye.